Town of Prescott Valley Joint Study Session. Clerk, please call the roll.
Roll call for Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioner Laney is excused. Commissioner King. Commissioner Huot is excused. Commissioner Bordun. Commissioner Rutherford. Vice Chair Erb.
Here.
Chair Griffiths. That's a quorum. Now, roll call for Town Council. Councilmember Keel.
Present.
Councilmember Freund. Councilmember Greer.
Here.
Councilmember Schumacher.
Present.
Vice Mayor Searcher.
Here.
Mayor Plaguda.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll just jump right on to discussion item. Welcome, sir. I don't know who's leading it off. Sir, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Right out of the gate, it's obvious we're doing a little different format today. We've talked about this last year and more recently to help facilitate interaction and a little more discussion. If I could, I'll give a little bit of context for today. It's been a moment since we met last, and what we've talked about previously was a wildlife corridor. And if you remember, there are two phases to this effort, and I'll let the consultants get in more detail, but if you remember, the first phase is what's termed the foundation guide. So more specifically, that's what we're talking about today. And it's really, the purpose is twofold. One is to give a progress report on some of the activities since we met last. The second is to really continue that data collection that they've been immersed in recent weeks and months. So with that, I know you met Sandy Hoffman with Logan Simpson, and she is a certified planner, senior associate. So I'd like her to kick off the discussion, and Michaela's here as well. Bruce is CEO with Logan Simpson. So I'll let them take off and strap in. It's a lot of information, and I think we'll enjoy it.
Well, good afternoon or early evening, everyone. We're so pleased to be with all of you. I'm Sandra Hoffman. I'm the project manager, but I'd like a chance for our CEO to introduce himself as well as Michaela. My background is, as he mentioned, I'm an AICP planner. My degree, I have a landscape architecture degree and an environmental planning degree, a master's degree. But this, I'd like to have Bruce introduce himself and Michaela.
Bruce Bean, CEO. Oops, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Bruce Bean, CEO of Logan Simpson. We're a 189 person firm, multidisciplinary, biology, cultural, planning and design, and been practicing for about 35 years. Headquartered in Tempe, Arizona firm for 34 years, but we have offices throughout the West, working in both mountain landscapes and western landscapes. Very true to our heart, and we're happy to have you here. We both do both master planning, city planning, but also environmental planning and the integration of both. So again, wonderful group here. Thank you for having us.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michaela Dunphy, also with Logan Simpson, an associate planner, and nice to be here.
All right, great, thank you. So the next slide's going to have an outline of what we hope to go over today. And so it basically talks about the introductions that we just had, and then we will be going into the project approach and how we're moving forward with it, the overview and kind of the taglines that we have that I think hopefully you will like, the project structure, existing conditions, the case studies that we're doing, and outreach that we've been starting to have. And part of you are the outreach so that we can get your feedback. It's critical, obviously, in your role as leaders for the town that we want your feedback. And then some key dates for that. So with that, we'll go to the next slide and we'll go to Bruce.
Great. Just to note the question on, you are in front of a bunch of planners today, so apologies for that. And but we are planners, both with backgrounds in resource management and so on. The firm itself, though, or maybe the structure of the team, Sandy's our project manager and Michaela's our assistant project manager, and make sure that we deliver a high quality product and a very graphic product. However, underneath that, we have a series of biologists. So we have a whole team of biologists at Logan Simpson. This is all they do, and they live and breathe, and would love to talk to you all day. Some of them will be at the event on the weekend. We also have dedicated people who focus on recreation and that integration of both wildlife, but also recreation, because multi-purpose corridors are sometimes the way to do these things when they have multiple purposes, including drainage or even utility conveyance. In addition to that, we have great technology in mapping. These will eventually become something that's spatial, something that's on the ground if we want to be serious about. So that's looking at where these fit in and how it fits in the landscape. I'm also going to point out other things in terms of technology. Being able to visualize these as we go forward is important to the public. People absorb information in a visual way nowadays. So we'll be showing some elements of that today, but as we go forward, it's going to be important that this is a visual document that people can see both what's there now, but maybe what it can look like in the future as the area grows will be very, very important. So just to rest assured, we have a larger team. We also have great associations with the 34 years with agencies as well as nonprofits that are also going to be supporting this effort as we go forward.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to do now, we decided was we had an outline of the actual graphic of what's going to happen in phase 1 and phase 2. And Michaela was the artist that created this. And so I'd have Michaela describe the graphic that's on the screen.
Sure. So as Sandy mentioned, we're in phase 1 of this project, which really sets the foundation for the development of a wildlife corridor plan. This phase 1 is the Wildlife Corridor Foundation Guide. So really the focus is setting the stage for development of a future corridor plan. And this first phase centers around really digging into the data, making sure that we're coordinating with the biologists and really making sure that we explore all the different opportunities for Prescott Valley. So looking into case studies and developing best practices. So that'll be a really big component of the foundation guide. And then once that's complete, moving into a phase 2, which involves the development of an actual corridor plan for the community.
Thank you. So one of the things that we did as an early step into to really visualize some of the things and help educate people, because education is really important as part of this, so that we can let people know, again, what is a wildlife corridor, what kinds are there. We had a video we've created. That's an early video. We intend to refine it, but you're going to be seeing the early version of the video. And over time, and as we move forward, it'll be refined some more. So with that, we'll turn over to Michaela and to move forward with the video.
What is a wildlife corridor? A wildlife corridor is a natural or planned habitat or crossing that connects animal populations to other suitable habitats. These corridors provide safe passage for native species around development and human activity. What are the different types of corridors? There are 8 types of supported development corridors that promote safe wildlife passage and movement. Existing natural feature corridors cannot be developed upon and acts as a natural barrier to humans. These corridors, like rocky ridgelines and raging rivers, can be planned around and form naturally with our landscape. Funnel-based corridors are created with the use of open space and zoning regulations that utilize the built environment as barriers to direct the wildlife to a single funnel that allows passage through a solar project, town, or region. Trail corridors preserve land for the utilization of a trail for humans and wildlife, but can be slimmer than that of the funnel zoning style corridor. This type enlarges the trail corridor, utilizing open space, parks, or open style zoning that does not allow for dense development, if any, within the zone. Corridors can also be crossing points for wildlife. Underpass corridors allow for natural passage of water and wildlife underneath a road. The most commonly shown example of a corridor is the wildlife overpass crossing that connects habitats over an existing road and replicates the habitat surrounding it. The final type focuses on pinch points around roadways, highway exit ramps for big game, and culverts for smaller mammal species. These existing types fall into the final larger scale plan of fencing, which promotes movement based upon the direction and design of fences, creating safe and organized movement corridors. Prescott Valley is planning on establishing a wildlife corridor plan to protect and preserve the amazing native species surrounding the valley. So we ask you, what is your vision for wildlife corridors in Prescott Valley?
Thank you. And also, I want to say that if you have comments or questions as we're presenting, please feel free to speak up. We would have this, it's fine to be interactive during this time as well. Excuse me. So so did we go? You did the video one more. There we are. So in phase one, we are talking about focusing on protecting and enhancing the natural waterways and open space areas within the town. Again, we're not going into specific identification of areas at this point. It's looking holistically at everything, trying to understand how it fits together. We're doing research as well as the patterns of the different wildlife species. And then we'll go into more about on Saturday, definitely, the different kinds of grasslands and riparian areas and so on. But the intent is to support healthy ecosystems. And so that's one of the key things that we have in wildlife connectivity. But looking also at the best practices. So part of the way we're doing, moving forward to that section that we'll have is to do the case studies. So we'll talk a little more about the case studies and how we started out with a large number and refined them down. And listening sessions and reaching out and having focus groups, having the meeting today, because we feel it's important not only to look at actual case studies, but to hear from the community, because the community really knows. You live here, you see it, you understand it, you talk to your neighbors, and we need to have that information because it's critical for us as we move forward. So I just want you to know that's another part of it, in addition to being scientifically based and taking that and working through the community support. And then again, is to enhance the habitats and the connectivity, because there's a relationship between habitats and connectivity that they coexist along with the existing development within your town. So one of by the way, the key tagline we call this is bridging habitats and building resilience. So you're bridging the habitats, but you're building the resilience of the town so that you can have that happy sort of coexistence of development, encouraging that, but yet maintaining those critical areas that you are finding ways to work together to make it work. So the guiding themes here is sustaining the ecosystem and aligning growth with nature. So we are looking at the connectivity, the biodiversity, resilient landscapes, because if you don't have healthy landscapes, that's where they eat. That's the food, that supports them. That's the habitats that they like to stay in, that they're comfortable in, that fits their behavior. And then aligning smart growth. So you want development. You don't want to say no development. You want to have quality development that works together with it. So it's in tandem together that you want that. And then community well-being, obviously everybody wants well-being for the community. And then collaborative planning, as Bruce alluded to earlier, that partnership thing, private, public, who can we have on board to work together to make this, as great of a project and a great of a success for the future for the town. There we go. Excuse me. So what's going to be in the final document? It's kind of like the table of contents of what you're going to have for the Wildlife Corridor Foundation Guide, which helps sets that stage that will build to phase 2. So it's going to have the community context. Where are you? Where do you sit in the whole region area? What kind of surroundings are you in? Land baseline includes everything from use. Definitely, is it already developed? Is it commercial? Is it residential? Is it a park? Ownership's important, understanding who owns it. Is it Arizona State Lands that owns it? Is it private ownership? Is it, who involved in the ownership of it? And then regulations. So we have a board up there that's your zoning. We've looked at your general plan. We've looked at existing documents, the parks and trail plans and such. And then circulation. Obviously, if there's plans for a future freeway or roadway circulation through town, where is that? And consideration of that as we're evaluating this guide and the foundation. The vision, we looked at your strategic plan, we looked at your general plan, the vision that you have there. And from there, we are going to solicit from all the feedback as well. What is the vision that the town has that you would like to achieve through an effort with considering the wildlife corridors and habitats in relation to smart growth? Public involvement, as already mentioned, is very critical. We'll be looking on the best practices, which will come out of, like I said earlier, the case studies and the outreach. And then what will come in June to this group here for a work session is we'll come down with sort of the overall summary of best practices. But from there, we're going to offer some strategic options. Based on the analysis and the feedback we've gotten, we may suggest, say, 3 strategic options for discussion here. And then you can say, wait a minute, I think we should take a piece of this and a piece of this and a piece of this, and we're going to do, this approach. And from there, that gives guidance for the next phase. So then we'll know when we're going for the plan, which will be a whole separate effort. You'll have a standalone wildlife corridor guide. And it's kind of, if you know what the city of Buckeye did, they ended up with a wildlife corridor best practice guide. It's a guide that sort of sets the stage, sets sort of the parameters, but it doesn't do any true enforcement tools or anything of that nature. When you get to a plan, and again in June, you make the decision, what level do you want for the plan? Do you want it to be just a guide with design guidelines and so on? We'll talk more about that in June, but just it'll lead to that where you will give direction as to how we should move forward for the next phase. So nothing's set right now. We're still collecting data. We're going to establish this base guideline, and then we'll decide from feedback through the work study session in particular where to move forward for the next phase. So we've done an existing conditions analysis. So you see some of the boards back there. We've looked at a variety of different elements. We've mapped quite a few things. So you see some of the mapping back there for us to really understand what the current situation is and then be able to utilize that information as we move forward, because it's critical when you do planning to know what is out there. Like, again, if it's private land, is it public land, is there, even where's the water flow, is it floodplain and things of that nature. So we're doing the research for that. And then the vision and guiding principles, again, came from your strategic plan and from your general plan. So we're looking at what your adopted documents are, adopted plans, and those are helping to guide the direction for the foundation guide. So within the case studies, we have a table, we're certainly happy to share that, has 34 different locations of wildlife corridors across the western United States. We did a ranking system that would, considering what is the environment in Prescott Valley, what is the type of wildlife that we understand is here and the topography and so on. We came up with a ranking system and came up with 5 of those 34 that we did more in-depth analysis for. And those included up there would be the town of Marana has a really good wildlife corridor system with actual regulations embedded in their zoning code. Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan in Pima County. One of the images in our video with kind of the crossing over the roadway is, again, was an image from down there. And so they've got a lot of different tools, and it's just trying to collect that list of different tools that we would summarize in best practices that could then help guide as it moves forward. Yavapai County has Arizona missing linkages. The Gallatin, Montana area has some really good wildlife corridors. And then Ventura County, California has also, we looked at them and we'll have a summary that we can share as we move forward. So with the public outreach, we wanted to do about 30 listening sessions. We've only been able to do about 15 now, just trying to connect with people and trying to hear their feedback with the different questions. Focus groups, we just finished the 3rd focus group this week. So we had one focus group was all the different departments within the town, trying to get representation and understanding of the department perspectives. Then we had one that was more wildlife interest group, so people that are knowledgeable about the wildlife. We had Arizona Game and Fish Department there. And then we had a third focus group, which was more landowners, business owners, and developers. And we had Arizona State Land Department representation there. Some of you were also on some of the focus groups and in the listening sessions. So we're collecting that information because it's so recent, and we're going to have the community meeting on Saturday. We'll assemble all that feedback and do an analysis and come up with some findings and summaries of what we've seen from all that feedback once we finish the event on Saturday. And we hope that you've all aware of the event that's on May 17th from 3:30 to 6 at Bronco Park at Granville. And again, the intent is to educate people. We will have our wildlife biologists there. We're going to have some wildlife there as well for people to see and be able to be involved and make it a fun event. So more. And for now, we're going to do a Menti poll that Michaela, some of you have been involved with the focus groups, has done Menti poll. So Michaela. Sure.
Have two themes listed, the sustaining ecosystems and aligning growth with nature. Are they listed as to what takes place first? Or is one take place and supersedes the second one?
So it's embedded when we did our existing conditions analysis, and we've gone through land use, we've gone through ownership and so on. We looked through that filter for, say, land use. We said, okay, looking at your existing land uses in town, how does it fit the sustaining ecosystems? And we did an analysis within our existing conditions report for that. And we actually went through each one of those for each of the chapters, I guess, or sections in our existing conditions. And after each of the sections as well, say the vision section, we have sort of like education lesson learned. So we do a summary of like, what are the key educational pieces that we would like to identify as you go forward, so that the intent is to go through each of the different chapters and each of the sections to look at it as how does it help sustaining ecosystems or not? Is there challenges? And aligning the growth with the nature, and how does that fit? Does that help?
Where I was going, because I feel that aligning growth with nature, that should take precedent with our smart development and collaborative planning. We need that before we can even figure out what to do with connectivity and where we're going to go with biodiversity preservation. So as long as we have aligning growth with nature, I feel that's far more important and should be the first one out of the box, besides figuring what type of landscape plants we need to put in the ground to support the traveling of these critters.
Okay, no, I understand. Sure. No, that's very helpful. I think our logic was kind of like, first we need to understand how do wildlife, what are their needs? Because then you go into aligning the growth with the nature. You then now know what they're trying to get, but you're right. It's critical for the overall growth. You've got to, they work together in tandem, I think.
And then I made this comment, I believe online yesterday, we talked about it. This corridor guide is for all species, not just our pronghorn and antelope. And I feel that's important for our citizens to understand that we have far more species that we're working with and trying to travel the right path besides pronghorn.
Yeah.
They're all important.
Yeah, that's a critical decision that this group will have to guide. This one? Is this one better? No, I like this one. All right, better? Awesome. Wow, sound like a rock star. So, no, I mean, I think that's a critical decision is which species are you optimizing for? But to your point, that's a critical one. Pronghorn is a very unique species. It's a grassland upland species and so on. But if so if you're just optimizing for that species, you might be losing the opportunity to preserve some other corridors. Also, different corridors have different widths, and these widths would be very clear, can undulate in size. So this idea of it's one size fits all, there's a width, when people throw out numbers, it's this big. That's not how wildlife corridors work. They can go smaller and they can get bigger. And then they also vary in size depending on the species. So for some species, the corridors that are very small can serve as both nature corridors, but also preserve key smaller species as well. I think what's important though is to recognize that when you're talking to biologists, there'll be some critical factors for some critical species that if you don't do A, B, and C, you will lead to their extirpation. So if you look at the valley floor, the loss of desert mule deer all around the Phoenix Valley, even though they preserved pockets and little pieces and so on, just the way that the development happened, they led to their extirpation. Areas like Buckeye and so on, they still have a chance to preserve that, as well as some bighorn sheep. So there will be some choices on some species that we need development like this to preserve that species. But I think it's a really vital component that if you're looking at all different types of corridors, it's going to be more of a holistic view on how to protect wildlife.
Thank
Does that
you for
help?
sharing. That was incredible. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a short question. So have you established a baseline list of the species that we're going to try to preserve, or is that still down the road a ways?
Okay.
So one of the women working on our team is Mary, and she's from Fort Collins. And in the existing conditions, I just said, go for it. She's got a whole section on wildlife, and she's got a table with all the wildlife. I mean, from burrowing owls, you got javelinas, you got coyotes, you got gray wolves, you got birds and other things like that. So I don't know if the table is totally inclusive of everything, but she certainly is well aware and is analyzed, and this is her passion. So awareness of all the different type of species and understanding their habitats and understanding what is the vegetation that they best, live in and thrive in and eat, and how they coexist and again, their behavior. She's the expert. I'm not. Talk to her on Saturday, but she can certainly explain. And that's part of what we're going to bring to you in June is understanding one solution it's not going to work. You've got to think in terms of, okay, some of them prefer this kind of environment, some like this, some like this. There's options. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, and I'm just going to do one more clarification on wildlife. Not everything migrates. So there's this sort of this visual that, of a smaller mammal sort of moving down a corridor and they're going somewhere. That's not necessarily how all wildlife work. For some species, migration patterns are necessary in order to breed, food sources, water, and so on. But for others, they don't always follow a certain pattern. Mountain lion is a good example of something that is fairly adaptable. And, if you're watching where a mountain lion goes, it might not be in a straight line as we tend to visualize it. Also, wildlife are also adaptable, meaning that they can adapt to certain key corridors if we create the environment. So where wildlife go today doesn't mean that that's where they'll go tomorrow. And I sort of laugh with, in this case, I'll throw an example that's not here so I don't get in trouble, but Jackson, Wyoming, you have the wildlife corridors mapped. I think we saw some of the funnels that they use in order to get wildlife over, in this case, deer and so on, to stop collisions, especially as we get more and more traffic. But ranchers will remind you that the wildlife is there because the food is there. So if I stop planting my food here, I'll probably have less wildlife and they may move over here. So we have to look at multiple factors when we choose a wildlife corridor, especially for a community that might build out.
Question. So with respect to these polls and getting information and ideas from our constituents here in Prescott Valley, do we have a questionnaire that people can fill out? And so you said that there's, a different type of species, not just necessarily the pronghorn, but what I would like to see is what do our constituents think about this, and which types do they feel is in the best interest of, working and protecting in also how you mentioned the endangered species as well, and how does that work?
No, it's fantastic. Again, we're going to do a Menti poll, which is similar, it's like a 10 questionnaire thing. Excuse me, it's based on SOAR, and again, Michaela will explain that. But the idea is to get that feedback regarding that. What are the species you feel are the most critical that you would like to have saved? And we're soliciting that feedback. And then Saturday, obviously, is an important time where we're going to have all kinds of interactive map graphics of like, where have you seen wildlife? And where do you think, we really need to be thoughtful about, preserving this area, or thinking about how you might have some measures that could be of a value type of thing. So that's sort of the intent behind it. So we're not doing a specific, you could rank, I guess, a questionnaire across the community to go rank all these species and say which one's number one. But I think the intent is to not just be focused on, again, as Bruce said, that there's interaction between a variety of different types of wildlife and species, bird species as well. So if everything from rodents that, dig holes, and the turtles and tortoises, the reptiles and the birds and the mammals that you have are all critical for making a healthy ecosystem.
Question. When you create a corridor, do we also then consider bringing in plant species and native grasses? Because not all plant species might be where we want a corridor to go. I'm not a biologist.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to just put on my recreation open space lens on for a second. But if you think about corridors and you forget about wildlife for a second, and you think about just healthy open space and creating a beautiful open space that, preserves your landscape, that's one sort of value. And part of open space preservation is clearly restoration and keeping healthy ecosystems. But one example of not only restoration, or maybe bringing in maybe traditional native landscapes that maybe have diminished over time, is also things like water and other things that are critical to wildlife. So restoration can be part of things, including even on smaller corridors where you can make healthier environments for our citizens.
Quick question as well. Right now, I know that when I have driven to work along the way, I see the pronghorn intermixed with the cattle. And it's like they also hang out with the cattle for protection from predators of coyotes, everything else that could come from that. Does that mean we need to put cattle in with the protected species then? Because they kind of intermingle now for protection. And I know that most of the pronghorn I've seen are also on private land. And if we're going to do fences, what's going to keep them from then being able to intermix with other herds? Like I know a lot of the herd that I have seen is out toward Talking Rock, that area. I don't think what the name of the road is, sorry. But as you drive out there, it's a huge, huge herd. And I know that they intermingle, and I don't want to keep one herd out from coming into our herd because that's what's going to keep it as a strong, viable herd right now. So that was just my idea.
Yeah, one of the things that you're talking about, I think it's important that this group consider, as well as citizens, is just co-benefits. And you're talking about where agriculture mixed with wildlife. In cases, wildlife may, in some cases, be able to mix with development, especially development that clusters and creates this sort of beautiful sort of place where you have houses and even a wildlife corridor beside it. And also recreation is clearly part of that. You have an incredible trail system, those types of things. So those co-benefits are something that we really do have to play up, because you're getting more bang for your buck when you do that. In terms of design guidelines, we're going to have to make sure that we also educate the public and understand that if you do choose to implement design guidelines, whether that's dark lighting to fence standards, that they do exactly what you want in terms of being able to do working landscapes and agriculture mixed with wildlife. So it gets tricky, but you're not the first community. But I do commend you from getting started on this early, because there's still some great intact landscapes out there.
I have a question. What happens if there's private property in the area?
Yeah, there's no, I'm happy to answer that. It's not the elephant in the room, but it's the reality of working on wildlife corridors is private property is, there's no animal that knows what private property is versus public. There are some that are smart during hunting season that know to not to come off the public lands or just stay or whatever, but there's no way around that one. So finding tools where hopefully private citizens understand that they want those landscapes preserved and they like seeing wildlife and they like the environment in which they bought into and that they live in and their families live in, hopefully will be one solution where they're part of that. The other way is the win-win solutions. So that could include both public funding, the ability to develop land, but to cluster some of your property so you get your land entitlement just in case you do want to develop. And it could go as far as acquisition of development rights and other things like that as you move forward to have a complete open space system. We can take state lands, for example, and state lands is considered private land in their eyes. It's lands that they intend to develop for income producing components. However, Arizona State Lands Department is open for discussion to say, I want to return off my property, but I'm willing to at least have a discussion about, is there a corridor that can happen through this property, or is there a land trade that can happen? So this is not a, if you're doing a full open space wildlife system, it's not a one thing and you're done. It's a work in progress over time. The great thing is if you look back, let's just say 20 years from now or 30 years from now, or even 40, you look back at these great systems and you say, how did they happen? They started in a room like this. And the great thing about open space or wildlife corridors, once they're preserved forever and serve a lot of purposes besides wildlife, including resiliency, flood protection, and so on. So no easy answer on that one. I think we recognize people's private property rights. But we also recognize that we want a great community where we still have wildlife.
Any more questions? We can go to the Menti poll then.
All right, so as Sandy mentioned, we're going to open it up to a series of questions and discussion. We've got a number of questions to move through, so we're going to go through each question fairly quickly, but know that we can come back to these slides and open it up for broader discussion after. We also wanted to give you a taste of the types of questions that we've been asking folks as part of the focus groups. We'll also be launching a community questionnaire on Saturday at the pop-up event. So we'll be asking similar questions to the broader community as well. So this will give you a taste of that. And so we'll be doing what we call a SOAR exercise. Some of you may have heard of a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is similar, but a bit more future and aspiration oriented. So we're going to talk a bit about some of the assets that are unique to Prescott Valley, some of the challenges that the community will have to overcome, and what opportunities exist as it relates to wildlife corridors, and then move into aspirations. So what's the desired direction for the outcome of this guide, and then results. So what are the measurable outcomes that we can use to show success? So if you would like, you can use your phone to scan this QR code to participate. And this will allow for your responses to pop up on the screen and populate word clouds. So it's kind of a fun exercise, fun way to see what other people are thinking. And then, as I mentioned, after we move through these questions, we can open it up to discussion. Yes, everyone, welcome to participate. If folks in the audience would like to scan the QR code with your phone, you're welcome to provide feedback as well. Looks like a few folks have logged in.
I think it's if it says waiting for the presenter, it's all set.
Yes, if it says waiting for the presenter, that means that you are ready to go.
And if the QR code doesn't go, you can actually go to the website.
Yes, you can go to menti.com if you're not able to access via that QR code.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. You can see results pretty quick.
All right, I'll give it a couple more seconds. It looks like we've got 6 folks that have given the thumbs up in the lower right corner of the screen.
Oh, yeah, everyone gives a thumbs up so we can know, yeah.
All right, 14,
And it also looks
15.
cool. Okay, that feels a lot better.
All right, so I'm going to move to
And
the first question.
want-
I'll pop up the QR.
And are we good?
Everyone get connected where you have a thumbs up, or we can do it verbally. We did some of that.
All
for the
right.
focus group.
So our first question related to strengths as part of this SOAR analysis is what native species, natural landmarks, or community conservation efforts make Prescott Valley a unique and valuable area for wildlife? Open spaces. So the idea is just, what comes to mind first? What are the 1 or 2 word takeaways that you want to share here? Pronghorn, Glassford Hill, grasslands, grassland birds, already existing open space. Great. And the larger the word, that means more people have submitted the same response. Those are your responses populating live.
You need to talk to your neighbor.
We're gonna have it
I
at
believe
Saturday's
you-
event, and you'll be able to do it Saturday's event.
I believe you're allowed to input up to 3 responses. And this is fairly in line with the feedback that we've been receiving as part of the focus groups with Pronghorn, Glassford Hill, and open spaces popping up in all of those focus groups as well. Great. All right, I'm going to move to the next question. I'll give it a couple more seconds. We're still getting responses. All right. Great, and we can come back to discussion once we get through all of these questions, but thanks for your responses here. All right, also related to strengths, what community resources or partnerships will be needed to support wildlife conservation and sustainable growth in Prescott Valley? What are the existing resources and partnerships that will be critical in this work? All right, AZ Game and Fish, ranchers, Yavapai College, great. Local government partnerships, public-private partnerships, developer partnerships, collaborations with other organizations, prioritizing environmental concerns. Great. Lots of references to different types of partnerships, different agencies in the region. So great, I'll scroll down here. Identifying policy, teachers of biology. Great. Collaboration across jurisdictions. All right. All right, I'm going to move to our next question here related to opportunities. So what are ways we can build on some of these existing resources and partnerships that you all just shared to sustain Prescott Valley's natural ecosystems while supporting quality development? This question relates to the guiding themes that Sandy mentioned earlier in the presentation, the sustaining natural ecosystems and aligning growth with nature, supporting quality development. Birding community, multi-purpose corridors, education, education, education. We have heard that quite a bit in a lot of our conversations and our listening sessions and focus groups. Land swaps and preservation agreements, continued public outreach. Great.
Yeah, everything we hear, we're going to try to ask consistent questions so we can put it all together and see if some themes emerge.
Great. Yeah, thanks everyone. These are great additions.
That's just people, yeah, people sort of cheering people on. It's really just keeping them the happiness level up. Mayor, but
We appreciate
good question, good question.
We appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Look at that, wow.
All right, great. We're still getting some responses here. So possible code overlays, agriculture, heritage, supporting food and livestock production. Great. All right, I'm going to move to the next question, also related to opportunities. So what are the biggest challenges Prescott Valley needs to overcome to most effectively align growth with nature? What are some of the biggest challenges Prescott Valley needs to overcome to effectively align growth with nature? Developer inflexibility. Identifying corridors. Data on species. Great. Public opinion. Only patches of public land. Overdevelopment, anti-growth attitudes. Great. Lots of responses here. Lots of unique responses. A mix of responses here, many related to public opinion, some related to policy. some related to the natural environment, some big challenges across all those areas. All right, move to the next one. So another opportunities question. From your perspectives, how can planning for wildlife corridors in Prescott Valley benefit the community? People want it. So there's an interest in the community for this. What benefits do you see coming out of this work? Quality of life, another increased quality of life, economic value, increased land value, responsibility, preservation, destination town, great, protect nature. So seeing some themes here as well. Bright future, manage development, limit growth, add economic value. A good mix of benefits here. Great. Quality of life. Looks like it's a popular one. Rural feel, protection of wildlife, views. Great. It's what many want. Great. All right, I'm going to move to the next question. Aspirations. What core values should guide the approach to fostering wildlife-friendly growth in Prescott Valley? And so for this question here, you can click on the different values, and then that will allow you to drag them into a order that you find most appropriate. So what core values rise to the top in your mind? So we've got quality of life, sustainable growth, connectivity, smart development, economic prosperity, collaborative planning, cultural and historic preservation, and conservation. From your perspectives, how would you rank those in terms of top core values as part of this effort? What would you like to see reflected in the plan? Great. Seeing quality of life again rise to the top, like on that previous question. Number 2 is cultural and historic preservation. 3, conservation. 4, smart development. All right, conservation's moving up, smart development's moving up.
Always vote last.
Great, so we've got quality of life, number 1, conservation, number 2, smart development, number 3. Great, I'll give it a couple more seconds. Any last minute entries here? Great. All right.
For some, it's just go do it.
So another question related to aspirations. This is a forward-looking question. Imagine the ideal future for Prescott Valley. What would a thriving community and flourishing ecosystem look like in 25 years? Think about Prescott Valley 25 years from now. What would a thriving community and flourishing ecosystems look like? Managed growth with plenty of open space, trees and landscape mature. Walkable communities with multimodal opportunities to travel around town. Great. Patches of development with connected open spaces and open space corridors. Symbiotic environment between economic growth and wildlife preservation. More rainfall. Amazing areas to be one with nature. Great. Open space, wildlife, and amenity of development. Managed growth, plenty of open space. Where the deer and the antelope range. Community our children can thrive in. Great. Well-planned dynamic community. The outdoor open space that embraces outdoor living. Awesome. These are some great responses. All right. I'm going to move to the next question here. So this is results. What changes would make you say, wow, Prescott Valley has both quality development and sustainable ecosystems with sufficient open space and wildlife corridors? Again, forward looking, envisioning Prescott Valley in the future, maybe 25 years from now. What would make you say, wow, there's great quality development and sustainable ecosystems? So similar to the previous question. What comes to mind for you? Permanent protection of open space. Preserve critical properties through purchase and or land use agreements. In 25 years, Prescott Valley will be another Scottsdale, sad but true. Clear identification of a corridor combined with smart planned development. Planned smart development, that's popping up a number of times. Lasso Loop Trail finished. Green infrastructure. To be on the front cover of National Geographic magazine. All right, great. New general plan with a bold vision to achieve the community and environment we want. Great. Thoughtful development that embraces open spaces, wildlife, and citizen input. Great. Open space and connectivity is our identity. Provide openness between large development with connecting wildlife and multi-use paths. Increase density downtown, increase height limit, preserve the outskirts of town with open space. And people who are proud of their open space. Great. The community version of it will be available as a typical questionnaire, so folks can just access it on their computer or phone and take it anytime. All right. One more question here related to results. What actions can the town and other community partners take in the next 10 years to help realize your aspirations? So all those aspirations that you just noted in the previous two questions. What are some of the key steps that the town can take, that community partners can take working together, collaboration piece has come up in a lot of our conversations across. Great. Identify and preserve corridors and open space, require open space preservation of new development, more community input, responsible growth, open-minded with realistic expectations and strategies for landowners and town plans. Be serious and willing about collaboration. Okay, so lots related to collaboration and community input. Add protections to the code to ensure protections in perpetuity. Implementation must follow planning. Yes. Public-private partnerships, businesses, economic incentives. Great. Proper land mappings. Cooperatively work together with SIMPO and all its members to develop the vision and plan. Great. All right, I'll give this one a couple more seconds. This is our last question. Really appreciate all these thoughtful responses. And this will also is just kind of a preview and a taste of the types of questions that we'll be opening up to the broader community as well. So what else would you like to share? This is an open-ended question, also an opportunity to maybe note some questions that we didn't ask that you maybe anticipated we would ask that we could potentially ask the community on Saturday. Or anything else that you thought might come up that didn't. What else would you like to share? And at this point, we can also open it up to discussion. But thank you, everyone, for participating.
So anybody have any comments, discussion, questions, or anything like that? Happy to address.
I just want to thank you guys for the work you've already done. Although there's a lot of work ahead of us, but this is a great foundation, great start. I'm excited to see what our finished product is actually going to look like, and I'm sure that the residents are also going to be excited about what we can put together. So kudos to you and your team. Great job.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We're just honored to work with you. I mean, Prescott Valley, I'm from Arizona. I just love the fact that you're taking this initiative and moving forward with this and have a definite sincere interest in seeing what you can do to make your community the best it can possibly be, at the same time helping the environment and the wildlife. So we're moving forward. I think the next stage we're going to kind of talk about just briefly is the community outreach that we have coming up at the community meeting, as well as we'll be coming back to you in the work session in June, on June the 19th. We are pulling together, again, the case studies have been very helpful because they took some steps before you're in Prescott Valley. So now we're going to learn from them when they said, well, we tried this kind of fencing and it didn't work. You can benefit from that. So from that, we're going to be able to glean clear best practices that could then be translated into the Wildlife Corridor Guide, and then move forward with how you might want to, what parts of these tools that have been used and how successful have they been, that you could then choose to maybe move forward with the phase 2 part of the project, with the plan part of it. But again, I think that the baseline that we're doing with the Wildlife Foundation Guide it's critical for you to understand. It's that education, understanding of all the elements, factors, and bringing in the feedback before you can build from there and go, okay, now we kind of understand how this all sort of fits together in the puzzle. What is the direction we want to go to then implement the parts that, as they mentioned in here, the approach and move forward with that phase of it. That phase will also include a lot of the same outreach to the focus groups we had before. So now they'll be able to have some more comments, later on as we move forward. And again, community input's really critical. Definitely, it's not just us, sitting in our office doing research, and case studies are critical. But you have a unique environment here. You know your community, you know this area, and it's so special in so many ways. Bruce and I drove through here, and we were just going, wow, look at this area. This is so cool. There's so much opportunity here. And so we want to do whatever we can to help support you and your vision. So we have the events. And then the fun event here up on the screen is Saturday. We will have some wildlife there coming. We will have booths there that they'll have one in particular with our wildlife biologist that'll be talking more of the actual science behind and understanding behaviors and the needs and so on. I'll be there, more planning. I'm the community planner, kind of like John, talking, okay, what's land use, property ownership, it's zoning, what's the general plan, how it all fits together. And then Michaela is our tech expert, our guru in innovation, and she'll have the video there, the Menti poll, and again, we'll have questionnaires there as well. And we intend to post another questionnaire probably on the town's website for people to just, all the public have a chance to provide their feedback that we can include in the analysis that we do as we move forward. So just want to thank you guys very much. And again, I don't know if Bruce has anything to say farewell.
No, awesome group and a cool format. Thanks for trying it. It's always risky to try new things. So I commend you for doing this. I love communities that are willing to do that. It looks like we had a question though.
No, I just wanted to make a comment. As we were going through the survey there, you could see a number of things kind of hold a theme, right? One of those themes, certainly there's a portion of our constituents in this town that would be perfectly happy if all development just stopped for the cost of wildlife, right? In their mind, wildlife is the number one priority in our community, and they see development as something that is interfering with that. I think in these public hearings, surveys out to the public, I think something that would go a long way to our constituents to help maybe ease some of that mindset is that the understanding of the different wildlife we're dealing with, obviously. The big push here, obviously, is the pronghorn. That's the one that people see the most, right? So that's the thing in the most forefront of their mind. And that they can be educated to understand how wildlife move and migrate and adjust to their environment. Comments get made at some of our planning and zoning committee meetings or council meetings that the public take offense to when we say, these animals move around. They move around when things tend to get in their way, like development, for example. I've come from a state where wildlife corridors were introduced and put across highways and through towns, and it went a long way to preserve herds of different wildlife. And I think that the number one thing I think that needs to be addressed is the education to the public on how this all works and the intent in the end. Is it to set aside lands for a wildlife corridor that would never be built upon and can't be encroached upon? I think that's important for them to understand that that's the intent of a wildlife corridor, is that it's lands put aside for animals to migrate through or habitat in or get their food source from. And if we can do things by stretching out our developments and so that everything's not clustered together, I think if the public can understand that that's our goal and our long-range approach, I think that would go a long ways to stemming the attitude of, development be damned. And that's a big attitude in this town that I've seen, is that if development stopped, everything would be perfect. And that's not the real world. Development's going to continue. I find it, disheartening a little bit when I see comments like, in 25 years, somebody thinks that this town is going to look like Scottsdale. I don't believe that for one instant. There's tens and tens of thousands of open acres in this town. And in 25 years, and even with a development rate that we, or a growth rate of right around 2%, we could never build enough to, one, eradicate a species in this town, or change just that openness feel that people have. So, thank you.
Just quickly, I just don't want to be remiss. Really appreciate council, planning and zoning making time. I think sometimes we forget we or they, in this instance, have a life outside of this right here. This is just one hat that's being worn. And I just want to appreciate that and remind ourselves that for you to really take ownership of this and participate like you do, outside of your regular meetings, this is a separate commitment from the scheduled meetings. So I just wanted to appreciate that and remind us all of that, that you're really taking an interest in this and participating, and will continue to. I mean, we're looking at the plan extending into next year and beyond. I mean, this is a living document, and to be able to take ownership, I think we just really appreciate it. Thank you.
So I grew up